Hey everybody, John from IPT. Today we're working on an '03 Volkswagen Eurovan, a Rialta 01P transmission. And sometimes in the transmission business, you end up doing stuff that you really don't want to do. This is something we worked on and something went wrong. And I'm going to show you guys, and you could put in the comments what you think happened here. Let's get into it. All right, there's two sections to this. There's the transmission part, which we expect to be good. And there's a differential section, and this runs in a different fluid. This takes 75W90 gear oil. And as you can see, this is not looking too happy. I wish I had a bearing to show you, but it kind of disintegrated. But as you can see, this is in pretty rough shape here. And this failed to the extent that our flange from the axle actually was running around like that and actually melted into the transmission case. We also see, I took the speedometer gear out of this before I did anything, and it's dry as a bone. Now, supposedly this didn't make it or anything like that, but as we see on our ring and pinion, our pinion no longer has any teeth on it. Melted off. Now, this kind of isn't something that just happened. But again, you guys could put in the comments what you think the issue is. I already have my theory. But anyway, I'm going to take the rest of this thing apart and I guess just show you the insides here and, you know, just a quickie for you guys. All right, I think I've done these in a couple other videos, but first things first, I'm going to take this rear cover off. 3 of the bolts typically have studs on them. Then I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the internals of the transmission section itself are just as lovely as when we put this together. Scenario is this customer drove, I don't know, a few hundred miles, and it all of a sudden stopped moving. He heard a clunk and kept driving. Then I don't know how long after that it stopped moving altogether, which would be consistent with a pinion that has no teeth. And as you can see, this little support bearing up here, it doesn't look that well lubricated. But again, I'm not jumping to any conclusions here, but it's a little dry. So what the plan is here, once these things get to this state, wow, they look like they kind of mushed this thing in with a jacking it up to the engine. And you know, in regards to any of this shit, this has very low mileage, and it sure as hell did not leave here like this. So I'm basically just gutting this out, and the plan is we're going to put all of this into another case because this melted pinion and all that other stuff, you're never getting out of here. Like the case itself is a paperweight. All the guts and everything, you know, we just redid this and it's should be in tip-top shape. Obviously, we're going to see that when we take it apart, but Let's get it apart. So when we do the, again, there's other videos. We have to do some pretty extensive work to these valve bodies because they tend to wear out. The solenoids are garbage. And this is often called the ribbon, but this is your internal wiring harness. And they have a little circuit board in there. And as these things get old and go through many, many heat cycles, this kind of gets damaged. And when you go ahead and take a valve body off or mess with it, you're usually going to have nothing but problems. It'll set codes and all kinds of things of that nature. So the valve body's off, and you got to kind of, or this is how I do it. You know, some guys will take all of these off individually. I take it all off in one piece for now. Okay. And you kind of need to do that to take it apart because you have this little oil delivery sleeve that feeds your low reverse clutch. There's a little O-ring on there, and that gets sandwiched between the clutch drum that's way down in here and the valve body. In addition, we have a 13 millimeter bolt in the back. And what you need to be aware of on this is that there's a little washer on it. And under that washer is a little spacer. Now, some people put this together wrong and crush this all down, like the spacer, it doesn't get centered, and it'll wipe out these bearings right away. Not a good time. Next, we're going to take our pump bolts out. So since this thing came back, I see this stuff in my nightmares. This pinion with no teeth. That's like pretty horrific stuff there. And if any of you guys are transmission guys, you already know what happened here. Although the shop that worked on it kind of been debating that with me. Again, this was all just on. But when you do work on it, you do want to make sure that's perfectly smooth in here. They're very sensitive to these rings on the input shaft, kind of grooving this out. I'm not going to open up this pump for now, but these pumps need to be perfect in these units. It's like zero tolerance for not good parts. Now this is your 2-4 clutch pack. And we have these little spacers in here, which are little cups to hold the return springs. And there's different setups, so you got to pay attention. We kind of revise them a little bit too when we do them because I like to get extra clutches in here. Wow, look how nice. Almost like it was just rebuilt. I'm not going to get into all of this now because you have to press these two drums apart, which is in another video. And I'm just taking a quick look to see what I already know. Is that everything else is going to be perfect in here. Kind of like the day it was put in. These are the single-sided frictions in here. All right, so it's there's double-sided in some, and some are single-sided. So in other words, one half of it acts as your steel plate. And there's a year change, but it's the later model ones that employ the single-sided clutches. Now we have a clutch hub, and this is kind of what I was talking about before. This is the bolt I took out, and this kind of sits here. So if you put it together like that, big problems. So you always want to make sure that's sitting where it belongs, and you might even want to put a little assembly grease on it so it doesn't shift while you're using it. And another thing on these transmissions, if you look at these bearings, they have a cup in them for lube. And the breakdown is that cupped side always, in all of them, faces the front of the transmission. A lot of people don't know that. And they kind of work either way, but there's just a wrong way and a right way. And again, same thing. The cup is facing towards the front of the transmission. One snap ring. This speed sensor here, we're going to have to take out. Otherwise, none of this stuff is coming out. Do that quick. So down in here, we have a center support. There's a piston on the other side of this that puts your low reverse frictions on in manual low and in reverse. Surprise, surprise, another perfect looking clutch pedal. Now in here you have a one-way clutch. Turns in one direction, locks in the other. And this thing is kind of a pain in the ass when you put the transmission together. There's a special tool to do it where you got to mess around, but once this is out, it's kind of tough to get it back on. But maybe I'll do an assembly video at some point on one of these. Planetary, again. Something that looks just as nice when we put it in. There's really not too much to these transmissions, but let's take another look in here. We could see this is actually melted. Okay, and there's a axle seal here. Well, there should be. But this got so hot that the axle seal melted out of it. The ironic part of that is even though there was no axle seal, it wasn't leaking any fluid. Kind of curious. But as you can see, this thing melted pretty hard. I mean, I don't know what has to happen for metal to to get like that, what kind of temperatures are involved. And another note on these differentials are almost 100% reliability. When you take these things apart, the differentials are always, always good, provided there's oil in them. So when we do these, we kind of inspect them, clean them up, and put them back in. Most of the work that we do is focused on the transmission part itself. So I don't know if I'll add to this video or make another video as this nightmare continues, but I am going to fix it up for the guy. Again, and that's going to require putting these internals in another case. And it's, you know, a lot more involved than what we're showing you here. We got to take a look at everything, go through everything again. Check clearances again because it's going to be in a new case. But at the end of the day, this is pretty disappointing. You know, when we do stuff, we don't ever want to see it again. Nor does anybody. Nor does anybody. But we now have a shop that installed this. Customer's not an automotive guy, but the shop is claiming that we did something wrong here. But again, you guys could give me your opinion in the comments. So in conclusion, this is your differential fill hole. And we don't like to ship them full because if oil spills, it's kind of a liability. There's a whole cradle to the grave thing. If oil spills from something that came from your shop, its whole destination to wherever it goes, you're responsible for it. That said, we ship them empty, but we put a tag on it that says, hey, fill the differential with 75W90 gear oil, synthetic. All right, this is how we fill these differentials. There's one or two ways to do it. You could fill it here in the car, right? It's just like most other differentials. You fill it up till the fluid starts pouring out. Or we could fill it through the speedo hole, which is a little bit easier on the bench. And also, it's a magnetic drain plug on these, right? And it's what, a 17 millimeter Allen, Ken? Mm-hmm. 17 millimeter Allen. Kind of takes a little while, so we might fast forward some, but let it drip on in there. Okay, so looks like it's starting to come out. Okay, so once it comes out, we're going to put our drain plug back in. .17 millimeter Allen. And the speedo. Now, interesting to note, if you're working on an 01M, like the passenger car version, the speedometer here is the dipstick for the differential. There's no fill plug. So what you want to do is fill it up till it touches this bottom piece, is what the manufacturer recommends. I go a little bit higher. I actually go all the way up to the bottom of the gear, so it ends up being a little overfill. But on these, they take just about a quart. Okay, so if you any question, if you're filling this up from empty, you're using a whole quart, really nothing more, nothing less, or a liter, depending on what part of the world you're in. Okay, so that's pretty much it for filling them. Now we're going to put the converter in. get this thing ready to ship and get it back to the customer.
Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.